The special order of the day is a minority report, and I will now introduce the Honorable Edwin Day, Minority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to thank you for affording me the opportunity to present this message on behalf of the minority members of the legislature this evening. I also want to welcome the president of the Littleton Neighborhood Association, Pete Vitro, and also a couple of my former football and baseball players from a few years ago. They're here tonight. Last year, I had expressed hope of looking forward to a spirited, challenging, and a respectful dialogue with our colleagues, and by and large, that tone prevailed, all to the benefit of the people of Rockland. I'm also proud that we accomplished a number of good things, much done collectively with the majority. We introduced legislation that supported successful efforts to bring some relief to taxpayers by affording access to federal GSA schedules that provide for volume pricing for the purchase of law enforcement, security, facilities management, and other related items, and reimbursements for Medicaid fraud detection software. We work with our sheriff, Jim Kralik, to explore new ways to both minimize the cost of housing our criminal population and expand his good efforts to protect our children from sexual predators on the internet. We sponsored legislation protecting our consumers from ingesting products that can be injurious to them and their families, and firmed up their rights when they make purchases. And yes, we often joined our colleagues in the majority in supporting legislation in many areas, most notably an area that is truly the people's common denominator, our environment. But tonight, none of us, legislative majority, minority, or executive branch, should revel in things past. Indeed, our whole focus needs to be on the crisis in front of us for one simple reason. We will truly and honestly be measured by what we do in the coming months. A couple of weeks ago, a fellow legislator mentioned the National Bureau of Economic Research had just declared that as December 2007, we were in a recession. I just love experts in government agencies. They're just so timely with the obvious. It is with deep frustration that I remind all that 1 year ago, when times still seemed good and the Dow Jones Index hovered about 13,000, it was this minority that sounded a clarion. We spoke of a pending fiscal crisis, citing current information from the Rockefeller Institute stating that we were then in a recession or about to enter one. We spoke of 24 states and numerous counties making preparations in front of pending budget gaps, and urged that we here in Rockland do not wait and also do the same. Our closing comments simply said, in layman's terms, these matters could very well be percolating as we speak tonight and does not bode well for our county. The frustration was compounded by the fact that these matters were brought forward by a group of legislators whose skills do not lie within finance, but rather the everyday world of teaching, human care, law enforcement, and business. As summer beckoned, the full legislature joined in requesting a deficit reduction plan from the executive branch, and some months later, these plans started to take root. We lost months of the one thing we could not afford to lose, valuable time, and the crisis that hit was far, far worse than anybody could have imagined. The impact? Let us be clear that this crisis is not made of paper losses, nor is it a game for the rich. The economic slump has hammered every person, each family, and all segments of our community. Unemployment is climbing. Our families with college-age kids have had their strategies decimated, along with the 529 plans. Our seniors took a 40% or more hit in the current funds that they are relying on to survive today. Property values are plummeting, sales have plunged, businesses who share a large part of the tax base with residents are barely hanging on, and the not-for-profits are struggling to handle the added demands of a poor economy. The economy and how we here in Rockland handle it is hands down the most compelling issue we face today. With crisis comes opportunity, with challenge comes the ability and need for leadership. We are hopeful that tonight more heed is given to our words than there were a year ago. While the recognition of the crisis is now clear, the challenge is how do we respond to permanently change the way we in Rockland government do business from here on in. It is often said that government should run as a business. The reality is nothing can be further from the truth, as government, because of its unique mission, simply does not have that luxury. For example, cops and teachers go to work, get paid, and on a ledger sheet produce no goods for the market, nor services that can be sold. Yet what value do we place on having a criminal taken off the streets so he does not hurt someone in your family? What of a child, maybe your child, who will go on to accomplish great things due to that teacher's special influence. Just what is the value of a life saved, either figuratively or literally? Look at the myriad of government workers who provide services that we've become used to. Our roads are paved and plowed. There's a trust in what we buy and ingest through effective consumer protection and help for those in need, our sick, our elderly, our displaced, and our at-risk youth, just to name a few. The benefit is clear. You see the obvious in the real estate section, where the largest selling points that keep your home and business value up is not location, 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 but rather excellent schools and high public safety ratings. It is found within the assessment by many that Rockland is simply a great place to live. What that does not mean, however, is government falls short in any way in its ultimate responsibility to be stewards and the exacting caretakers of the funds we collect from people to do these good things. We cannot be betrayed by inefficiency, waste, lack of forward thinking, or an attitude that the more we spend, the better everything will magically be. We emphasize here that we can and should take lessons from the business community and look to implement some best practices. While there was bipartisan support for this year's budget, there was also bipartisan objections. The common agreement within this legislature was that there was again a need to take the budget submitted to us by the county executive and create a reserve fund to cover projected revenue that we felt simply would not come to fruition. It is our belief that, even with no cuts in funding from the state or federal government, we will add severely to the already projected $9 to $11 million deficit we are starting off with due to 2008 shortfalls. And the reserve fund this legislature created will only make a dent in the inevitable. With all segments of the economy under stress and a recession that has no end in sight, our county is facing Herculean challenges going forward. For us, business as usual can no longer be the order of the day. We cannot tax our way out of the situation. We need to think outside of the box, and we offer the following thoughts. There have been annual calls for multi-year budgeting, primarily under the chair, Harriet Cornell. Certainly we have concurred with that and support it. But now, particularly in light of this crisis, we call upon our county executive to immediately initiate, and for our colleagues in the majority to support, a zero-based budget initiative for next year and continuing forward as a matter of policy. By and large, this year's budget showed line upon line of increases within departments that add up to a 4% spending increase. It is imperative that each part of our government begin the process at zero and justify each and every dollar requested. We certainly will support and actively contribute to the efforts being moved forward by both the county executive, who has created a committee to look at government operations, and a legislature's government operations committee, who looks to analyze the organizational structure of county departments. But we all need to recognize that this is also not new ground, and remind that during the budget vote, I commented that the submitted budget showed no real effort to consolidate departments and government functions. We must all agree and accept that the mere assignment of a committee or an analysis that ends up on file cannot be the result of these initiatives. Last year, the minority brought the issue of the logic of our continued involvement in the MTA to the floor of the legislature. Our discussion, a good faith attempt to quantify the apparent inequity that our legislative fiscal analyst determined was conveying $17 million of Rockland County taxpayers' money, an equivalent of nearly 1/3 of all county property taxes collected over and above what we receive from the MTA. Our efforts fell short, largely due to a lack of input by anyone outside the legislature itself, not from the executive branch nor from the MTA. In just sales and mortgage taxes alone, Rockland has conveyed nearly $100 million over what we received from the MTA just over the past 10 years. Now the MTA is proposing service cuts and massive fare hikes ranging from 33% to 75%. And in keeping with the MTA's Bible of the MTA giveth and the MTA taketh away, they include the recently heralded weekend service they just announced. They also look to institute what they call a mobility tax, a payroll tax of 33 cents per $100 on payroll of all employees in the region. Hear this, everyone. This is a tax on all levels of government, school districts, all businesses, all not-for-profits, shamefully so. The MTA would collect $250 for a worker making $75,000 a year. The projected cost of this tax on just the county payroll is estimated over $500,000, and you, the taxpayer, picks up the tab through higher taxes. The mobility in this plan clearly does not refer to a one-seat ride to New York City on the existing West Shore Rail. That promise is still wanting. And now we see the county executive asserting that our arrangement with the MTA, we convey $40 million more than we receive in value from the MTA, and the institution of the mobility tax would bring that amount to $100 million. So in essence, we are giving away an amount equivalent to 2/3 of our property tax receipts now, and if the payroll tax is implemented, we will be conveying to the MTA nearly double the amount of property taxes we collect. In short, this has gone from a bad deal to sheer madness. And we need to state loud and clear to the MTA that we are ready to engage in our very own Rockland brand of mobility by walking away. As the county executive said in his statement, and I quote, "The county of Rockland has endured more than 20 years of being shortchanged by the MTA," and we concur. However, unlike the county executive, we in the minority believe the time is long past for, as he puts it, expressing strong opposition. The MTA has not and is not responding to talk. They need to see action. To that end, we have submitted legislation for formal hearings in the matter with an eye on passing legislation this year to pull out of the MTA as soon as possible unless a major, quantified change in relationship occurs immediately. We look for support in this endeavor by both the county executive and the majority. We compliment the county executive on his implementation of an early retirement plan. We recommend to the executive branch that it be reopened again this year. But in tandem that, we encourage that a roadmap be laid out on how to ensure the ability to minimize the impact of losing experienced personnel. This would demand that we plan, look at where we are and where do we want to be as we progress forward. We must look at the dynamics of local share cost in selected positions and focus on retaining positions that are less burdensome to direct local taxpayer funding and more reliant on state and federal funding. We must institute the cross-training of personnel where feasible to facilitate this effort. We must include what I view to be an all too often untapped brain trust of working men and women. In my professional life, much of the success attributed to me came from simply listening to those who did the job, translating that, and simply providing a steady hand on the helm. Government is measured by how we care for the less fortunate and helpless among us. By any measure, government failed miserably at our Summit Park Hospital, where a tragic death occurred. While we fully respect the rights of all those involved, the need for an unfettered investigation by outside agencies, and the potential of the liability for every taxpayer in Rockland, we are insistent that we have committee hearings within our legislature on this matter. As the people's body, we have the absolute right, indeed a solemn duty, to know exactly what has occurred. What is the present and potential future financial impact upon our county, and most importantly, to ensure that the issues cited by the state have been fully remediated. The proposed executive state budget will be draconian and hurtful to Rockland County, mostly because of a continuing sleight of hand transference of cost to local government that would impress the great Houdini. The most recent estimates show that if left unchanged, there will be 137 tax and fee increases costing the average family nearly $4,000 annually. The New York State Association of Counties exposed the latest savings put forth that would allow the state to do something that none of us can do: freeze our own property tax payments and reduce pilot payments on property owned by the state. Who was left holding the bag? Local taxpayers through our property taxes. The minority vociferously objects to any so-called cuts that are in actuality a direct transference of mandated costs that will be borne by a local taxpayer. These are called tax increases, and we will call upon the county executive to immediately notify and work with this legislature when these matters come to his attention. We need to speak with one voice and ensure that our state representatives fully understand the direct impact of these actions on our constituents. The reported promise of cash infusion from the federal economic stimulus package will be a $14 million boon, but let us not be lulled, as this is a most welcome one-shot windfall and it is much like rain that gives us some relief from a drought. Unless we change the landscape, we only delay the crisis for another year. The remainder of the minority legislative agenda will be aggressive in 2009 and includes dealing with unlicensed contractors, commonly called gypsy pavers, those transient criminals who rip off our citizens, particularly our elderly, with shoddy work, high prices, and distraction-based thievery. A Fair Wage Worker and Community Protection Act, crafted in conjunction with our district attorney, designed to ensure taxpayer dollars spent on local projects are done by qualified, professional, and competent workers, and ensuring that unscrupulous contractors do not pocket your hard-earned tax dollars by cutting corners in construction and other sensitive projects that could also result in a tragedy. Legislation focused on ensuring the cleanliness and safety of places where our children play, and I compliment Legislator Sparaco for that legislation, and Legislator Jobson, who's introduced legislation designed to stem the increasing abuse by young people of the over-the-counter cough suppressant DMX, and help for our heroic local volunteers by doing our part to ensure that they can opt into the less expensive New York State health insurance plan. For our part in the minority, we are looking forward to working with our colleagues here in these chambers and with the executive branch. We will faithfully fulfill the demands to being this legislature's loyal opposition, while never losing sight of the fact that now, more than ever, we need to put people over politics. We expect vigor, spirit, and energy to fill these chambers, and rest assured we will contribute to these dynamics whenever and wherever possible. While we will at times respectfully disagree, it is our hope that each and every legislator bring passion to the floor, for that is what we need to do, particularly during these trying times, in service to the people of Rockland. While we will do our utmost to bring our neighbors' concerns to government's table, we ask our citizens to be active participants, as the challenges we face belong to all of us. We as elected officials are enabled by only one authority, you, the people. Be involved, because in a final analysis, we are all in this together. It is fitting that I close my comments with a good thought for the brave men and women who serve our country in the armed forces of the United States of America. While many among us contribute to the greater good in so many remarkable and admirable ways, it is these warriors who do so with one noble purpose: to allow us to gather and debate in chambers such as these across this great country. Unlike many countries, we have a unique ability to be able to express our beliefs freely and without fear of retribution. We thank them all for the most special gift of all, our freedom. They protect that gift willingly, without question, and with no hesitation, and they do so with the full knowledge that they will make the ultimate sacrifice to ensure our liberty. God bless each and every one of them, and may God bless this great country of ours. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Legislator Day.